All right, excited about this because I just randomly saw it on Twitter about a half hour ago, and I knew we were going to talk about it in the last segment, so I bookmarked it, and I said, okay, I'm going to bring this up at 5 o'clock and get Gambo's reaction to it. And then about halfway through it, he's like, you want me to just get Kevin O'Connor on the show? I'm like, hell yeah, just get Kevin O'Connor on the show. Right. Let's do it. Joining us right now,
great NBA guy,
basketball analyst who's been covering the league for over 10 years, host of the Kevin O'Connor Show, available everywhere you get your podcasts, according to his Twitter bio. Kevin O'Connor joining us here on the Burns and Gambo Show. Kevin, thank you for being so readily available on a Friday night, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, man, I'm happy to join. I got nothing going on this Friday night. What else to do but talk Phoenix Suns basketball and trade ideas?
I know. Now, listen, I checked in today, and I can't rule out Zach LaVine. I can't rule that out. I'm going to say it's highly unlikely that they would trade for Zach LaVine, but they got a lot of stuff going on right now. They're looking at not just the Butler deal, but many deals to try to shape this roster because they're very disappointed. The organization is very disappointed in the way they're playing, and they want to fix it. And if they can't fix it, they may decide to pivot, but they're going to do everything they can to kind of fix it. Your trade idea is the first one. I'm not going to lie to you. It's the first one that I looked at and I said, okay, I kind of like this. And I'll tell you why. They're not trading Ryan Dunn. Everybody else has them trading Ryan Dunn. And they're not giving up all 3 of their first-round picks. They're only giving up 2 of them. So they hold on to Dunn, and they hold on to a first. And maybe it's saving face. I don't know. But it's giving up less to still end up with the guy that they wanted.
Yes. Giving up Ryan Dunn, that's a terrible idea. It should be a non-starter for the Suns in any scenario to give up Dunn. Like, he's a necessity for this roster with how important he is defensively and what he's shown he can be, at least through stretches as a shooter. So I think what I like about my deal is it feels like it makes sense for all the teams involved. Like, for the Bucks, they don't want Bradley Beal, so, they get Zach LaVine in this scenario. The Heat don't want long-term salaries. They get some tradable guys in Chris Middleton and Pat Connaughton. The Pistons could use a big they can shoot. They get Bobby Portis from the Bucks. And the Bulls, they're the ones that I'm like, why would they want Bradley Beal? But for if you're looking for a team that's going to take on Beal, his college head coach, Billy Donovan, is there. They're in a situation where they want to accumulate assets. So if they could get a pick from the Suns and maybe something else from somebody else, maybe they view Beal as a guy who can restore his career there, help out some of those young guys, and maybe they could flip him when he's near the end of that contract. It just feels mutually beneficial for all 5 of the teams involved in that. Kind of like the idea isn't necessarily based in like what I'm hearing, what will happen. It's just connecting dots of all these different things that you're hearing teams are prioritizing, like I said, with the Bucks.
Yeah, and I'll read for anybody who might have just tuned in, I'll recap it, even though you did a pretty darn good job of doing it there yourself. The Bulls would get Bradley Beal in one of the Suns' first-rounders. The Pistons would get Portis. The Heat would get Middleton, Connaughton, 2 firsts and a second. One of the firsts would be coming from the Suns. The Bucks would get Zach LaVine. The Suns would get Jimmy Butler. And I'm kind of glad you went through the here's why they would want this and here's why they would want that. And you're going to know infinitely more about this than I am, so I'll just ask. Zach LaVine and the Bucks, would they want Zach LaVine? Tell me about how he would fit what they might need and what they might be looking to accomplish here, Kevin.
So throughout this week, there's been some rumblings around the league that the Bucks would have a look at Zach LaVine. The Athletic was the first to report this publicly.
Okay.
And that connects with what I've been hearing, what a lot of people around the league have been hearing, that they like LaVine. So if they like LaVine, you would think in that scenario that the Bulls could be a team that would end up with Bradley Beal in that scenario. Now, the Bucks could, of course, go straight to the Bulls and try to get LaVine for Middleton and Connaughton in that scenario, or something like along those lines. But it's complicated for the Bucks when it comes to aggregating salaries. They need to get under the second apron in order to combine salaries on a deal. So that's why, like, you have Shams Charania, among others, talking about how this might have to be a 5-team deal, something massive like that, because of all the complications with the collective bargaining agreement. But yes, it does sound like the Bucks could have their eyes set on Zach LaVine, whereas with Bradley Beal, not so much.
The Miami thing's fascinating because, they're an apron team and they're well over, and their goal is to get, under the apron. Their goal is to, eventually be able to use the $14.1 million exception, the 5.1 biannual, cut Duncan Robinson. They can get to $23 million under if Butler's gone and he decides not to opt in next year. But this gives them at least contracts that would be off the books so they could be a bigger player that next year. Now, they're not going to get Luka. He's going to sign a supermax with Dallas this summer. But it does allow them to be a player in free agency a lot quicker, with those contracts.
Maybe. I mean, that's the tough thing for the Heat here, right? Because with Chris Middleton and Pat Connaughton under this theoretical trade construct, those guys have player options for this coming season. Middleton, coming off of double ankle surgery, has not been himself this year. Pat Connaughton, limited playing time for the Bucks this year and what has been really a struggle for him. They might instead say, you know what, we don't want these picks. We just would rather walk into free agency with guaranteed cap space. To me, I think Miami, that'd be a bit short-sighted. It's not like this is some spectacular free agent class where you're going to want that money this year. Getting the picks and then having 2026 cap space, I think makes more sense for Miami, but I'm not them. I don't know what their actual objectives are this offseason with what they think are possible, but I'd want draft picks in return if I'm giving up Jimmy Butler in 26 cap space rather than 25 cap space.
Joining us right now on the Burns and Gambo Show, Kevin O'Connor, host of the Kevin O'Connor Show. If you listen to podcasts, when you listen to podcasts and you want NBA stuff, I'm glad we've got you on because I really do value your opinion about this, and it's something we've been talking about a lot the last couple of shows or so. If the trade deadline comes to pass and nothing happens for the Suns, or nothing regarding Jimmy Butler and Bradley Beal happens with the Phoenix Suns, is there toothpaste to be put back in the tube here? Can the Suns, figure this out with Bradley Beal, or is this a situation where you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak?
I mean, that's going to be a good question here. Like, is there a backup plan involving Beal? Like, could you do something? Let's just say the Bulls were open to Bradley Beal. Could you do something for Vooch, their center, and Lonzo Ball? Is there something to be done there?
So now we'll have 7 centers on the roster because we still got Nurkic. We just added Richards. We got Plumlee. We got Oso. We'll have 7 centers on the roster. Why not?
Old school NBA.
All
Why
center,
not?
Come on, Kevin.
I mean, maybe in that scenario, you're flipping Nurkic with one of those first for somebody else around the league. Maybe you're getting a wing for him or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, I think for Bradley Beal, I'm curious, like with you guys, what's your assessment of why Mark Bartelstein, his agent, twice now has come out publicly and has been so firm in his priorities are to go back to the Phoenix Suns and get healthy and help turn this team around. Why has he done that twice? I'm not sure what the priorities are there, but the Bulls are one team that he did not mention as a team that he wouldn't waive the no trades clause for. He said the Bucks and these other teams and all that, but he didn't mention the Bulls.
It's a good question. He's a great agent. So I'm sure there's a method to the madness. He knows what he's doing. Beal, Bartelstein wanted Beal to go to Milwaukee a couple of years ago before he came to Phoenix, but obviously Beal had the no trade still, and my understanding is his wife was opposed to it. His wife didn't want to go to Milwaukee, so he ended up in Phoenix. My understanding is that, there are teams that he would go to would be like L.A., Miami, Denver. I think Mark Stein or somebody said that he would go to Milwaukee, and we kind of followed up on that a little bit. But to think that, like, this Jimmy Butler thing, Kevin, started in, like, December 10th or 11th. We're 6 weeks into that. To think that you haven't had a conversation with your player about, hey, if something happens, where would you want to go? That, to me, that's ridiculous. Of course they have had – you wouldn't be doing your job if you didn't talk to him and say something could happen any day. They're trying to get Butler. Everybody knows if they get Butler, Beal's got to go. So I don't know why he's saying it, but he's probably doing everything he can to protect his player and do the right thing by Bradley Beal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's all it is. It's all about kind of protecting against the tampering and all that type of hoopla, like with Bernie Lee, Jimmy Butler's agent, coming out against Shams Charania and all that. It's all political.
Right.
So I think that's probably all it is. But the Bulls not being mentioned is interesting. I said this on my podcast, or maybe I was on Bill Simmons earlier this week. I might have said it to him. I forget. It was on some show I was on this week, and I said how about a month ago, one source said to me how the Bulls were one of the teams that Phoenix was hoping could be an option. And then I heard nothing about the Bulls until this week with like that Levine stuff started coming out, and there's a trickling of stuff like that about them being a potential option for Beal. So I'm really intrigued how they've been kind of the dark horse team that has been very, very quiet until nearing the deadline at this point. I don't know if this is a desperation for Phoenix in terms of options running out for sending him, but it's just interesting to me how like it was only one person that said that to me about a month ago, and now it seems like it's becoming a bit more out there for Phoenix as one of their options.
Kevin, is all of this worth it for the Suns? This pursuit of Jimmy Butler, is this the Ark of the Covenant for them that they're going after here?
That's the big question.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm very much annoyed with Butler, and I mean he's been a malcontent, and he's pushed his way out of multiple teams. He cried his way out of Minnesota, and then in Philadelphia he went long stretches of not even shooting threes because he didn't like the way the offense was working around him, and now this is happening in Miami after 2 finals appearances, and I just don't know if this guy is gonna be worth all this hassle for the Suns, especially given the state that they're in. I say all that, and yet it's like, well, what are they missing? A wing defender who can penetrate into the paint and get to the basket and draw fouls and can facilitate. Like, they're missing a guy like Jimmy Butler.
Guess what? 15 teams are looking for wing defenders right now.
Yeah. So
everybody.
If you get those guys. Yes, they're hard to find. And so if you have an opportunity to get that guy who can do all this other stuff, yeah, maybe he's worth the swing. And, I mean, I just don't know what's actually going to amount to winning in the playoffs.
All right, leave me with this. The Suns aren't able to get Butler. They stick with what they got. They make a minor move or two to improve the roster. They lose in the play-in tournament, or, by the way, look at their schedule the next 39 games. It's brutal. They lose in the play-in tournament of the first round. That's 3 years. It would be 3 years of playoffs with Durant that it didn't amount to anything. Do you blow it up in the offseason?
Yeah, I'd pull the plug. I would. If they don't turn it around this season, if I'm James Jones and I'm Ishbia and that whole decision-making crew, I pull the plug on this if it doesn't work this season and go get a ton of picks. And then that 3-for-1 first-round deal they just made with Utah, then suddenly if they trade Durant for a bunch, and if they were to trade Booker for a hell of a lot, suddenly you might have the most picks in the NBA out of anybody. And that would position them to have a clean slate moving forward with some good young players, Ryan Dunn, Iguodala, whoever they get in this year's draft. Like, I would go that route rather than forcing this again and again and again and again when clearly something's fundamentally missing from the roster.
Kevin, it's awesome that that Gambo reached out and you picked up the phone almost immediately on a Friday. It's always great talking hoops with you, man. We love picking your brain. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for the trade suggestion on Twitter that sparked the conversation in the first place. We really appreciate it, man.
Hey, great chatting with you guys as always. Hope you enjoy your Friday and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kevin.
That's Kevin O'Connor, basketball analyst who's been covering the NBA for over 10 years. He's the host of the Kevin O'Connor Show, frequently a guest on Bill Simmons' podcast and others as well. So it's great to have him on.
Thanks for watching Burns and Gambo. Click to see more from the guys and hit the button in the middle to subscribe so you never miss a video from Arizona sports.